You were standing in a parking lot at 2 in the morning, soaking wet, watching the car you just drove into a flooded underpass sink below the water line. The water came up fast. Faster than you thought possible. You had maybe 30 seconds where the smart move was obvious. Reverse, get out, go around. But you didn't take it. You kept going, because you had been driving for 4 hours, because this was the shortest route home, because you had already committed to it, and somewhere in the back of your brain, a very old, very stupid piece of software decided that turning back would mean those 4 hours were wasted. So you kept going, into the water, into the dark. That piece of software has a name. We'll get to it. First, understand what just happened. You did not make a bad decision because you are a bad decision maker. You made a bad decision because your brain executed a program that was running silently in the background, one you never agreed to install, one that has been running since before you were old enough to know it existed. It felt like logic. It felt like commitment. It felt like the sensible, resolute thing to do. That feeling was a lie, and the flood was very real. This is not about survival in the wilderness sense. There is no blizzard here. There is no frostbite. The thing that kills you in this story is invisible. It lives inside the part of your brain that does accounting. And it will walk you straight into deep water with complete confidence and zero hesitation if you let it. The program is called the sunk cost fallacy. And you run it constantly, every single day, in ways that are embarrassing once you see them and nearly impossible to override once you understand why. Here's what it is at the mechanical level. You have already spent something. Time, money, effort, emotional energy. It does not matter which. That thing you spent is gone. It is unrecoverable. It belongs to the past, and the past does not negotiate. A rational system would look at this situation and say, what I have already spent is irrelevant. The only question is what decision, made right now, produces the best outcome from this point forward. That is it. That is the whole calculation. Spent resources do not factor in. Your brain does not do this. Your brain looks at what you have already spent and treats it like a weight on the scale. The more you have spent, the harder it pulls you toward continuing, regardless of whether continuing makes any sense. You are not calculating forward. You are calculating backward. And backward is the wrong direction when the water is rising. In 1985, researchers Hal Arks and Catherine Bloomer ran a study that should haunt you. They gave participants a hypothetical. Imagine you bought a ski trip for $100 and later, separately, bought a second ski trip to a better resort for $50. The trips overlap. You can only go on one. Which do you choose? The rational answer is the better resort. You paid less for it. It is the superior experience. It is the obvious choice. But the majority of participants chose the $100 trip, the worst trip, because they had spent more on it. The sunk cost was dictating the future. The ghost of a past decision was steering a present one. Now scale that up. Apply it to the job you hate but have worked for 8 years. The relationship that stopped working 2 years ago but you have been in for 5. The business you have poured savings into that has not turned a profit in 18 months. The degree you are finishing because you are 3 years in and leaving now would mean those 3 years meant nothing. The war that continues because stopping would mean the soldiers already lost died for nothing. The stakes change. The mechanism does not. Your brain treats spent resources like a debt that the future owes the past. And that debt doesn't exist. It was never real. The $100 from the ski trip study is gone whether you go on the trip or not. The 3 years of a bad relationship are gone whether you end it tomorrow or in 3 more years. Continuing does not redeem the loss. It just adds more loss on top of it. But your brain does not experience it that way. Your brain experiences stopping as waste and continuing as meaning. It mistakes momentum for wisdom. Here's where it gets sharper. The fallacy does not just cost you money or time in the abstract. It costs you specific, concrete things in the actual world. It costs you the better ski resort. It cost you the 2 years you could have spent building something real after leaving the bad job. It cost you the chance to redirect, recalibrate, survive. The flooded underpass is just the version where the cost is most visible. Most of the time, the cost is diffuse, spread across months and years, which is exactly why it is so difficult to see and so easy to keep paying. There is also something that makes this worse, and you need to hear it even though it is uncomfortable. The sunk cost fallacy is more powerful when other people are watching, when you have made a public commitment, when you have told people about the plan, when backing down means looking like you quit. Now you are not just managing a private accounting error inside your own head. You are managing your reputation, your identity, the story you have told other people about who you are and what you are doing, and that social pressure fuses with the fallacy like an accelerant. The water rises faster. You drive deeper. Researchers at the University of Chicago found that people are significantly more likely to continue a failing course of action when they have made a public commitment to it. You are not just fighting your own bad software. You are fighting the version of yourself you already announced to the world. That version does not want to be wrong. That version will drive into a flooded underpass before it admits it took the wrong route. You need to know this, not so you can feel bad about it. You need to know this so you can spot the mechanism running in real time. The feeling of I've come too far to stop now. The feeling of I can't let all that effort go to waste. The feeling of we're already in it. Those feelings are not wisdom. They are the program executing. They are the software doing exactly what it was built to do, which is protect your sense of consistency and completion at the expense of your actual outcomes. The water does not care how far you have come. It does not care what the trip cost. It does not negotiate with momentum or good intentions or how many years you put in. The question is never how much have I spent. The question is always, given where I am right now, what is the best move forward? That is the only question that matters. And right now, if you are honest with yourself, you can probably think of at least one place in your life where you are not asking it, where you are standing at the edge of the underpass, water already past the tires, telling yourself you've come this far. We are going to fix that. The program runs because it was never supposed to be a bug. That is the part nobody tells you, and it matters, because if you think you are fighting a malfunction, you will approach it wrong. You are not fighting a malfunction. You are fighting a feature, one that worked well for a very long time, in a very different world, and now misfires constantly in this one. Go back far enough and the logic was sound. You are a human animal living in a resource-scarce environment. You have spent 3 days tracking a deer. 3 days of calories burned, miles covered, cold nights endured. The deer escapes. Do you give up hunting entirely? No. You factor in your investment. You keep going, because in that world, the things you had already spent effort on were usually indicators of where future effort was worth spending. The path you had already cleared was probably still the best path. The relationship you had already built was probably still worth maintaining. Past investment was a rough proxy for future value. Not perfect, but good enough to survive on. That heuristic got baked in, deep. And now you are standing in a car dealership being told the model you wanted has a 6-month wait, but there's a similar one available today. And by the way, you have already been here for 2 hours filling out paperwork, and it would be such a shame to let all that go to waste. The salesman did not invent this trick. He just learned to find the lever that your brain already had installed. The word for that lever is escalation of commitment. It is what happens when the sunk cost fallacy stops being a passive error and becomes an active one. You don't just stay the course because you have already spent something. You spend more. You double down. You throw good money after bad, as the old expression goes, because at some level your brain has decided that additional investment will retroactively justify the original investment. It will not. It never does. But the feeling is very convincing. In 1976, Barry Staw published a study on exactly this. He gave business school students a scenario. A company had invested money in a struggling division. They could allocate more funds. Students who had been told they personally made the original investment allocated significantly more additional funds to the failing division than students who were told someone else had made the original call. Same information, same failing division. The only variable was personal ownership of the past decision. That was enough to change the future one. You defend your past choices by compounding them. You build a monument to a mistake using more mistakes as the bricks. Now think about what this looks like in real life. Not in a business school scenario, in your actual life. The startup that has not worked for 18 months, but you keep funding because stopping now would mean admitting you were wrong from the beginning. The renovation project that has gone 50% over budget and you keep authorizing payments because you are so close, because the money already spent demands to be honored by completion. The toxic friendship you keep showing up for because you have known this person for 15 years and those 15 years have to mean something. The escalation is always dressed up as loyalty or perseverance or belief. Those are real virtues. The fallacy wears them like a costume. Here's how you tell the difference. Genuine perseverance is responsive to new information. It updates. It asks, given what I now know, is continuing still the right call? And sometimes the answer is yes. Keep going. The fundamentals are still sound. The setbacks are temporary. Push through. That is real resilience. The sunk cost fallacy does not ask that question. It cannot ask that question because the question requires treating past investment as irrelevant, and the program is specifically designed to prevent that. The fallacy is perseverance with the feedback loop removed. Stubbornness dressed up as strength. This is where it gets personal. You have probably caught yourself saying some version of the following sentences, and I want you to hear them differently now. I have put too much into this to walk away. We have been through too much together. I cannot quit now. Not after everything I have sacrificed. Those sentences feel like they describe the situation. They do not. They describe the program running. The situation is always simply, what is the best move from here? Those sentences are the fallacy talking, and the fallacy is not on your side. There is a concept in economics called opportunity cost. It does not get talked about enough in this context, but it should, because it is the other side of the sunk cost coin. Every hour you spend continuing a bad investment is an hour you are not spending building a good one. Every month you stay in the wrong job is a month you are not developing skills for the right one. Every year you keep a dead project on life support is a year you are not starting the project that might actually work. The sunk cost fallacy does not just trap you in the past. It steals your future. It sits on the door and makes sure you cannot walk through it. The researchers Christopher Anderson and Suzanne Bryan found that people in positions of power are actually more susceptible to escalation of commitment, not less. The assumption is that experience and authority make you better at cutting your losses. The data says the opposite. The more invested you are in a decision, professionally and personally, the harder your brain fights to justify it with additional investment. Success does not protect you from this. In some ways, success makes you more vulnerable because you have more past wins telling you that your judgment is good, and that makes it harder to hear the signal when your judgment has gone wrong. You are not immune because you are smart. You are not immune because you have been burned before. You are not immune because you know the name of the fallacy now. Knowing the name of the water does not mean you cannot drown in it. But here's where the edge comes in. Here's what changes when you actually understand the mechanism and not just the label. You can build a simple test. One question. A single diagnostic you can run on any decision where you feel that pull, that gravitational tug of I have come too far to stop. The question is this. If I had not already spent anything, if I were starting fresh right now with no history, would I choose to begin this? Would I choose to start this relationship, this project, this path, this investment from zero today with what I now know? If the answer is yes, then continuing is a genuine choice made on present evidence. If the answer is no, then what you are calling commitment is actually just the program running. You are not choosing to continue. You are being carried. That distinction is everything. A choice you are making and a current you are caught and feel almost identical from the inside. The difference is whether you ask the question. Most people never ask it. They stay in the current their whole lives and call it conviction. Ask the question. Every time. Especially when the pull is strongest. Especially when the stakes feel highest. Especially when other people are watching and walking away feels like failure. That is precisely when the fallacy has the most leverage over you. That is when the question matters most. The water is still rising. You know that now. The question is what you do next. So here's where you actually do something about it. Not theorize, not nod along. Do something. Because understanding a trap and escaping a trap are two completely different skills, and most people stop at understanding and call it growth. They learn the name of the current. They still drown in it. You are not going to do that. The first thing you need is what decision theorists call a pre-mortem. Not a postmortem, which is what you do after something fails, when the damage is done and the money is gone and the relationship is rubble. A pre-mortem. You run it before. You sit down with a decision you are currently inside of, one where you feel that pull of investment, that gravity of past commitment, and you imagine it has already failed. Not might fail. Has failed. It is 6 months from now and it went wrong. Completely wrong. You write down, specifically and honestly, why. What were the signs you ignored? What was the moment you should have stopped but did not? What did the continuation cost you that stopping early would have saved? This is not pessimism. This is calibration. You are not hoping it fails. You are pressure testing your commitment against a realistic failure scenario so that your decision to continue, if you make it, is a genuine choice and not just the program executing. Researchers at Wharton found that teams who conducted pre-mortems identified 30% more potential failure points than teams who did not. 30% more things they could actually fix or prepare for. The pre-mortem does not make you a quitter. It makes you a clearer thinker inside a decision rather than a passenger being carried by one. Run it right now on whatever you are holding. You know what it is. The thing you thought about when Chapter 1 described the flooded underpass. Run the pre-mortem on that thing. Ask where it ends if it keeps going the way it is going. Ask what it costs. Ask whether the person you will be in 2 years will look back on the decision to continue and call it wisdom or call it the most expensive mistake you ever made in slow motion. Now the second thing, and this one is harder because it requires you to involve other people, which means it requires some humility, which is in genuinely short supply when the sunk cost fallacy is running at full power. Because the fallacy feeds on ego, and ego does not enjoy outside input. But do it anyway. Find someone with no stake in your decision. Not your business partner, not your spouse, not your friend who has been encouraging you for the last 2 years and would feel partly responsible if you stopped. Someone outside, someone who has no emotional investment in what you have already spent because they were not there when you spent it. Show them the current state of the situation, not the history. Not the journey, the current state. And ask them, if someone brought this to you today with no prior context, would you tell them to get in? Their answer will be diagnostic. If they say yes, immediately, without hesitation, then your continued investment has present tense justification. Good. Continue. With confidence. If they pause or hedge or start asking careful questions, or if their face does something their words are trying to be polite about, that is data. Expensive data that costs you nothing to collect. The outsider cannot see your past investment. They can only see your present situation. That is exactly why their perspective is worth more than your own right now. Not because they are smarter, but because they are uncontaminated by the thing that is distorting your judgment. This is not weakness. Submitting your decisions to outside scrutiny when you are deeply invested in them is one of the most difficult and disciplined things a person can do. It requires you to hold your commitment loosely enough that it can be examined while being invested enough to care about the outcome. That is a narrow channel to navigate. Most people avoid it entirely. Those people stay in the underpass. The third thing is the one that feels the most counterintuitive, so stay with it. You need to practice stopping. Not on the big decisions first, on small ones. Deliberately. Exit the movie you are not enjoying 40 minutes in and do not feel bad about it. Close the book that is not working at page 60 and put it down without guilt. Leave the restaurant meal half eaten if you are full. These are low-stakes rehearsals for a high-stakes skill. Every time you stop something early because stopping is the right call and you do not punish yourself for the sunk cost, you are weakening the program. You are writing new code over old code. You are teaching your brain, through direct experience, that stopping is not the same as losing. That the money spent on the movie ticket is gone whether you sit through the bad movie or not. That your time has value independent of what you already paid. This sounds almost insultingly simple. It is not simple. It is a practice, in the same way that a muscle is built through repetition and not through reading about repetition. You cannot think your way out of a visceral bias. You have to act your way out of it repeatedly until the new response starts to feel more natural than the old one. It will not feel natural at first. Stopping early will feel like waste. It will feel like failure. That feeling is the program protesting. Let it protest. Do it anyway. The discomfort is the proof that you are overwriting something real. There is one more thing, and this is the piece that nobody talks about, and it might be the most important piece of all. You need to separate the decision from your identity. This is where the fallacy draws its deepest power. When a choice you have made becomes part of who you are, when it is not just something you did, but something you are, then abandoning it stops feeling like changing course and starts feeling like self-destruction. The entrepreneur who has bet their identity on the company, the parent who has publicly championed a choice for their family, the person who has told everyone they know that this relationship is the one. Changing course does not just feel financially costly or temporarily wasteful. It feels like annihilation. It feels like the person who made that original choice will cease to exist if you admit the choice was wrong. But here's the truth that cuts clean through that. The person who admits a mistake and changes course is not the person who made the mistake. They are the next person, a better informed, more honest, more adaptable version who used real evidence to update a real decision. That is not weakness of character. That is the definition of good judgment operating across time. The person who cannot change course because their identity is fused to their past decisions is not strong. They are stuck. There is a difference, and it is not a small one. You drove into the underpass because you had been driving for 4 hours, and turning back felt like erasing those 4 hours. It did not erase them. Nothing erases them. They happened. The question was never whether those 4 hours mattered. The question was whether the next 30 seconds were going to cost you more than the whole night. The program said, keep going. The water said, stop. Listen to the water. Not because stopping is always right. Not because sunk costs are always a reason to quit. Sometimes the fundamentals are sound and the difficulty is temporary and the right move genuinely is to push through. But that decision, when it is the right decision, survives the pre-mortem. It survives the outside perspective. It survives the honest question of whether you would choose to begin this today. When the answer is still yes after all of that, you are not running the program. You are making a choice. And a choice made with clear eyes, against the pull of past investment, with full awareness of what continuation costs you, is one of the most powerful things a person can do. The fallacy wants you passive. It wants you carried. It wants the decision made for you by the weight of what you have already spent, so you never have to face the discomfort of choosing freely in the present. Choose freely, in the present, every time. That is not a small thing. That is the whole thing. The underpass is behind you now. The road ahead does not owe anything to the road behind. Move.